see you. Thank you for joining us. So, first, can you explain to people your background and what is Verizon Business Markets versus the Verizon that potentially consumers are more generally aware of?
Yeah, definitely. So, Aaron, I'm a technologist. Over 2 decades of connecting people, connecting things, and connecting people with things. And what I have been really fortunate to be doing since I started here is seeing that great advancement in technology and wireless technology and how it has buoyed so many other industries. For me, typically it's been about growth. I've done a lot of development, I've done a lot of marketing, and then a lot of sales. And I'll just give you a few tidbits which are fairly interesting. Anyone of you remember the Razr? The Razr phone, the first, so I was a part of the team that built the Razr. Fast forward 10 years from there, I was a part of the team that got the first VoLTE phone call on LTE. And then in 2019, the team that launched the first 5G commercial network. So it's been pretty cool. And what I've been doing for the last several months now, it's been a year, is really selling to partners in the small and medium business space nationally. And it's been a really rewarding journey, especially as we are at that cusp of the new explosion with 5G. So looking forward to talking about that and really glad to be here with the team.
So for those, I'm sure everyone is familiar with 5G. We've been talking quite a bit about it. But at a base level, like if you're talking to a family member or a friend, they're like, what's the big deal with 5G? What's the friendly answer? What's the big deal?
Yeah. So to talk about 5G, I think it would be best to go back probably 4 decades and start right at the advent of technology called wireless. That was specifically 1983, the Motorola Dynatec phone. And the way you should be thinking about it is and you're a lot of technologists, but if you just sit back and think about it, think about roads that are being built, right? So in 1983, we built some dirt roads, a few of them sparsely, and we called it then wireless or mobility. We call it now 1G. And all that we did was voice. So we got people to start moving around and doing voice. 10 years later, we paved those roads and started doing a little bit of texting. So you started communicating a bit. And the fun really began at the turn of the century when we got data in there and we started getting connected to internet in a mobile way. And come to the turn of that decade, 4G started, and that's where, boom, there was an explosion of a whole bunch of connectivity solutions. And you started seeing a lot in terms of what we're seeing today. You started seeing work being done through mobility. You started seeing a lot of e-commerce, a ton of stuff around demand economy, a lot of streaming of voice and video, a lot of applications. Anybody do the Wordle today? Yeah, those kinds of applications. 3 of 6 for me today. Anybody do beat that? Well, probably not.
It's pretty good. 3 of 6 is pretty good.
Yeah, and a winning streak of 200. So hopefully someone can beat that one.
That sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, well, I love every kind of challenge, especially when it comes to technology. And some really good applications. So there's an application for everything. In fact, if you want to be looking around for ghosts around you, there's an application for that too. It's called the Spirit Box. Not kidding. You can go download that too. So a lot has happened in the whole 4G world. And now we're at the precipice of that next evolution into 5G. And what I'll tell you is, if you just sit back and think of where we started 1983 to today, what if I tell you there's a 1 million times growth in terms of how much bandwidth can be spent through this channel that we've built. And we're as Verizon, very, very bullish about the investments we are making in that space because 5G is bound to change a lot of what we know of the world today. And the way I think about it is, Aaron, we started off with a very, very static connectivity. We moved into what is the social world that we know. And now what 5G is going to do is bring it into a spatial world. So you go from being a little bit interactive in 4G to absolutely immersive in 5G. And that's what the fun is going to be.
Does that mean that you are bought into the metaverse, or you just believe spatial in general is where the opportunity is?
I'll tell you, we're 50 billion bought into the metaverse. That's how much investment Verizon has done in the whole story around the immersive technology that all that 5G is going to bring to the forefront. So absolutely bought in.
We've had some conversations with folks about this who have said, especially, I don't know if we're coming out of the pandemic or not, but whatever we're in right now, they want more in-person experiences. And the idea of the metaverse, to some, anecdotally, is not as exciting as maybe it was pre-pandemic. So how do you see the convergence of society with some of these technologies and how we can embrace some of these the advancements here, but also bring people together in an authentic way?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Look, a lot of folks have been realizing that there are ways that you can be sitting out there virtually and connecting. There are folks who are now, as you're coming back to work, realizing that there is the power of humans and humans being there with each other. And I think what 5G actually is starting to do, and it's starting, but we're really at that tip right now, and it's going to explode, is starting to pull together the physical and the digital world. I call it phygital, and it's really where the metamorphosis of how we work, how we play, how we socialize is going to happen. Just to step back and think about 5G, what it's doing now is it's giving you the ability to have speeds that are 10x. It's giving you the ability to have a lot of data, about 100x of where we are today. A lot of connections and devices, think sensors on you, on the objects around you, think 1000x, and latencies, and I'll give a little more details around that, which are a tenth of where we are at. There, I said it, it's 10, 100, 1000, 1/10. And what does that all do? Let's just split it up into layman's terms. So when you're talking about speeds, and you're talking about 10x the speed, 100x of the bandwidth to bring in, you're talking about data that is massive, that can be sitting anywhere at the edge or far in the cloud, that you can pull at the click of a button and really be able to be doing split workloads, right? So think about a lot of the examples people are giving around doing high compute for healthcare or for retail or for industries that can happen elsewhere, but you can bring it down to you very, very quickly. Think now about what I talked about, latency. So any guesses on how much the response time is, how quick the response time is for a visual stimulation that a human gets? I'll tell you, it's in milliseconds. Visual, a human. So the best in class is about 200 milliseconds. So if you get a visual stimulus, you react in about 200 milliseconds. That's fast. Well, 5G promises to bring that to 1 to 10 milliseconds. What does that mean? Well, what that means is Aparna's driving on NJ Turnpike at 60 miles an hour. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't go over speed limit. And bang, something comes in front of me and I hit the brakes. It takes me at that 200, 250 milliseconds, 33 yards before the car actually comes to a stop. That could be a matter of life and death. Well, if I could use 5G and I could use autonomous sensors in the V2X form, that reduces to an inch. Literally, by the time the system realizes there's something in front of you and slams the brake, it's 1 milliseconds of that delay, and you've moved forward only an inch. And that's what latency is going to give you, is it's taking the power of you and the power of the vehicle and adding all these sensors, and that latency delay with that massive bandwidth is going to get you to a place a lot faster or get you to react a lot faster. And that's a matter of life and death. That's a matter of getting things done in a way which you couldn't have dreamt of today.
I know you couldn't join us this morning. We talked about the opportunity of what we call building a better future for all. This Better X Summit is about how technology plays a role in a variety of industries where we see a regional strength. And so two of those strengths in particular are around health and life sciences, and which we just heard from, and we'll hear shortly from on what we call Better Planet and where technology can play a role in climate change and powering progress. Can you share any, and you can punt on these because I didn't prep you on these issues, but can you share any practical applications like you just shared on how potentially 5G could impact the patient care opportunity as well as is there something in the energy space where if there are inevitabilities, we can lean on them here in New Jersey?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about healthcare first. It's one of the spaces which has the initial set of use cases that we're actually trying out in labs right now, as well as with a lot of the hospitals. And there are lots of use cases. So one of them is around the augmented reality and virtual reality world. And this is where you can be doing a lot of the graphical rendering, a lot of the geospatial 3D positioning, as well as a lot of your object recognition, computer vision and such. What does that do in the medical space? Well, a couple of things. At first, think about remote patient telemedicine monitoring. I talked about sensors that can be embedded outside of the human as well as inside the human. And these are sensors which 5G, given its low power needs, can survive without a battery change for 10 years. Very low cost. You can get a lot of the massive data together and push it out to a central location. So telemedicine, teletherapy, these are things that can be done in a lot more effective way where you can see the minute details and changes real time, near real time at the other end. The other great example that we've been testing right now and we're very excited about is around the whole surgical interventions that you can be doing remotely. So think about a remote place that's sitting out there and you've got these surgeons, many of them across multiple locations working together, and they can be looking at holographic images and really making those changes. This is real, guys. This is real. It's happening today and it's only going to get better. Another example which can really be applied anywhere is around ER and how you could absolutely transform how first responders can be getting help, again at split second. Think about all the massive data from the edge, from the site, accident site, that can be transferred over and real-time help be brought in terms of what needs to be done, what kind of intervention. And a couple of seconds is a matter of life and death, as we just discussed, and that can help immensely. Training is another one. So the list goes on. There's so much we can be doing in that healthcare space. And it's starting. And what I would invite everyone to do is join the team. You know, I say this to a lot of people. When mobility started in the 1980s, McKinsey actually did a study which was commissioned and the question was, how big is wireless going to be by the turn of the century? You're talking about the turn of the 21st century. And their answer was 900,000 phones in the hands of people by the end of the century. Any guesses where we were by the end of 1999, early 2000? Well, in the US, it was 110 million, but yes, 1 billion. That's how off they were. They were off by more than 99.99%. And that just goes to prove you don't know how far you can go with technology. We've created this palette with a whole bunch of what we call currencies in 5G. The high bandwidth, the high availability, the low cost, the immense access, low latency, as I called out. Now it's up to all of us to figure out and conjure up those solutions.
I want to revisit also, can you share similar opportunities in the climate space and how
Yes.
5G may potentially apply?
Absolutely. So energy management is another one where all the way through 4G, and actually we started this, that was my first role in Verizon. We started with these smart meters that were connected across homes and across industries, and we started collecting data. What 5G does is you're starting to think about the demand gen equation. And as you're thinking about a grid that has a lot of the solar as well as other generation as well as consumption opportunities collected together, you're talking about making changes and making decisions in seconds to save energy as well as to provide energy in the right places. So IoT and the function of IoT, as you're thinking about these meters spread across various locations and collecting that data and making decisions on where demand should go and how we should be thinking about supply, is going to be saving hundreds and thousands of dollars initially, but over time, millions and billions in that energy space.
I know you're thinking about this globally. We at Tech United New Jersey like to think about how can these things happen here first, especially where there are inevitabilities in the world. Let's have them happen here first.
Yeah.
Do you see any opportunities where there is some regional strength that entrepreneurs or other corporations potentially interested in 5G could lean in here, that there's a regional advantage?
Absolutely. So I told you all I'm in sales. So I will be standing outside if anybody wants to come talk to me after this meeting. But let me tell you about what it is that we can be doing today, and I am doing today. Yesterday, I was in Kansas City, and I was talking to this energy company. Actually, they do electricals and automation in a lot of buildings. And we signed them up for a couple of opportunities, which I'd love to share with you. So number one is using 5G for broadband. So you all heard of Fios? Yeah, so, and we have this concept called open for sale. So how many buildings have we crossed for Fios? So that's about a 17 million in the Northeast open for sale that Verizon has on Fios. And that's over a couple of decades of really hard investment that we have 17 million open for sale. Well, we launched.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Is that opportunity households?
Addressable market.
Not necessarily signed up at the moment.
That's right.
Got
signed up is, a good 40, 50% of that usually. That's great. 17 million, lots of investment over 2 decades. We launched what we call ultra wideband with the spectrum that we bought, the 50 billion that we bought last year, $50 billion of spectrum. We launched that at the turn of this year, so in January. And you know where we are right now with open for sale? 130 million. That's the power of broadband being expanded over the entire country, and we can bring you speeds of upwards of 100 megabits per second there. That's broadband at its best. It's got great uplink, great downlink, very affordable. All that you need to do is sign up with Verizon. We'll send you a router. You connect it, plug it, and voila, you're good to go. It's available today, and we have a lot of our partners in the small and mid space leveraging that. Why do you need that? Well, you need bandwidth. We've seen in all the surveys we've done through small, medium business, there's a lot that's happening in terms of digital transformation. You need that bandwidth. So that's the number one thing, is look at all your needs from a broadband perspective and leverage this. The second thing we sold to this partner yesterday is the concept of a private network. So typically what you want to do is when you have an automation solution, say as an industry that you are selling, you want to make sure it's secure, it's reliable, and it's not banking on the connectivity that the building has, right? It's got its own unique pipe. It's highly secure, and it's always available. Well, earlier on with 4G and even the previous technologies, that private network construct was highly expensive, and it was meant for those, what we call the global enterprises. Now what we've done is we've down-marketed that. It's easier, it's very easy to implement, but also cost-wise very affordable. So imagine you having your own private network, your own slice of the network that you can be affording today. And we are starting to deploy that across the country, across various solutions, healthcare, retail, like I said, in various service industries as well. So that's another great example of where you can be leveraging. And then the third piece is, like I said, all of us need to just be conjuring up the possibilities of tomorrow. So we invite each and every one of you from every industry, pick an industry, we invite you to come work with us to come up with those solutions that then can be used to further New Jersey, further the US, the entire global landscape in terms of where we can be taking the humankind.
So I know that you're also a champion for women leaders. What more can we do to inspire more women leadership, especially in technology?
Yeah, lovely question. Thank you so much for asking that. So me personally, but also Verizon, believes heavily in the power of diversity, in thought, diversity in where you come from, diversity in what you bring to the table. And in order to do that, we need to make sure there's great representation across all facets of humans within our company, but also elsewhere. So we do a ton in that space. I will tell you what has worked for me, and then I'll tell you what we can do in a larger scale. But what has worked for me is reach out and pay it forward. So if you're where you are, just make sure that you're reaching out and paying forward to another human being, be it a woman, be it an individual from a diverse background, and make sure that they are invited and included and can bring their voice to the table. Very important. We've seen a huge amount of success with that. One individual you can touch is one individual more than that will have a seat on the table. So let's continue doing that and bringing that forward for everybody.
Did anyone ever do that for you?
Totally, all the time. I came from India 25 years ago to this country. Prior to that, I was in Africa. And when I came here, I was in Bell Labs as the only scientist, woman scientist out there, and an engineer that had just started. And I had all these scientists around me. And there was this one individual who literally, I walked into a room once. There were all these people sitting across the table. And I picked a chair right at the back, being new, being the woman, the only woman in the room. And this individual pulled me up to the table and gave me that seat. Now, after that, it was my voice that had to be heard, and it was really the knowledge that I was bringing to the table. But that one seat at the table did so much for me. And I think it's all about us giving that seat to individuals and paying it forward. And I think we can collectively be doing so much, and within Verizon and outside, we do this all the time. And for me, it's been very inspirational to see others, and I'm hoping that so is the case for the others who are following me.
I can imagine being the only female in a room of scientists is a challenging environment. What would you tell the men in the room, and maybe in particular the white men in the room, that we need to be more aware of when there are other, whether it's scientists or other backgrounds, but things we should be more aware of or sensitive to that you might have dealt with in those kinds of rooms that perhaps we're unaware of and should be more sensitive about?
Absolutely. Give everyone a chance. Let knowledge be the best equalizer. Give folks a seat at the table and be inclusive. And you will see absolute wonders happening as you do that.
I do want to reiterate, Verizon, Aparna, we have a board member, the CRO of Verizon, and Sampath, are committed to seeing this happen regionally, seeing this happen specifically in New Jersey, where they obviously have their eyes on the globe. And I think this is a change in what you've seen in the New Jersey entrepreneurial and innovation economy and ecosystem in the last decade. Organizations like Verizon, LabCorp, RWJ Barnabas, Audible, we'll hear from PSEG in a moment. But their commitment to seeing these things happen here first is significant and important, and there's real opportunity for startups to thrive here. So I hope that we can work together as a community to see some of these things happen here first. Aparna, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.